Are your property taxes going to go up or down this year? Hey, that's a fair question. With appraisal notices ready to hit mailboxes in New Braunfels and Comal County this April, it's a question every property owner is asking. Today I'm sitting down with the director of the Comal County Appraisal District, Jeffrey Booker, to break down whether property values are rising or falling. We'll also cover Governor Abbott's proposal to raise the Homestead exemption again for the third time in 4 years, and a new state law impacting homeowners and why New Braunfels is handling that differently. Plus, we'll share how to protest your appraisal if you'd like to do that and take advantage of homestead exemptions that could save you a lot of money. If you are new here to my channel, thank you so much for coming aboard, because every week we're putting out timely and relevant information just like this about what it's like to live in New Braunfels. Let's get straight to the bottom line. Will you be paying more in property taxes in New Braunfels and Comal County this year or less? Let's go one-on-one with the director of the Comal County Appraisal District, Jeffrey Booker. Jeffrey, thanks for having us.
Yes, sir.
Jeffrey Booker, director of the Comal County Appraisal District, and the man with a plan, the man with all the answers, including what's the weather going to be like this summer, right? You got all the answers, right?
I wish I did.
So thanks for carving out the time. Again, it's so important to do this every year because many people don't know what a homestead is. Maybe you've never applied for one.
Sure.
And we have possibly a homestead exemption, another one, the third and fourth years may be taking place this year. We'll talk about that later on. But your team has been in the field since January 1st every year, your team of appraisers. And talk to us about, before we get to what they've found so far, let's talk about that process. So you start on January 1st and you cover 115,000 properties, something like that?
We do. There's about 115,000 parcels in Comal County. Appraisal dates as of January the 1st every year. We are basically out in the field, 7 to 8 months out of the year, picking up those new improvements, making sure we have things classed right, and then after that we get into sending out notices and protesting, and just a life cycle every year the same.
So we have a unique market in Comal County. We have new construction, we have resale, right, existing homes, and then we have the combined market.
Right.
We have 115,000 plus properties, but we don't have 115,000 plus appraisers.
Right.
So how does that work? Do you appraise every house, or are there blanket appraisals, or how does that work?
So we utilize aerial pictometry. We do go in the field. We have a reappraisal plan where we have to at least inspect every property once every 3 years. We pick up all the new construction, all that is field work. We use mass appraisal. In doing all of our analysis, we do it in groups or a universe of properties after we get all those improvements.
Okay. And what methods do you use to pull comps? Because we're a non-disclosure state, so how does that work?
Sure. We rely heavily on sales surveys that we send out to property owners. We get a pretty decent response. When people come in and do protest their values, they bring in their own comps, and we look at that information and we use that to make sure our values are set accurately.
Okay, but not allowed to use MLS or third-party websites?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, so let's get into it.
Right. All right.
And let's get into, been in the field since January 1st. We're going on March here, we're in March. Next month, April, is the appraisal notices get mailed out to homeowners.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'm not looking for a bottom line, one-fits-all answer here. What can people expect? Because we've seen, again, 2024 was another down market, but it came up a little bit at the end of the year. And year over year, median sale price in the city was up about 2.8%. Down in hill country, about 0.7%.
Sure.
So you want to call it a wash. But what can people expect on average when they get their appraisal notices in the mail in April?
So I think it all depends, and you kind of already just touched on it. It's the market area that you're in, right? Mm-hmm. We don't just blanket raise or lower properties across Comal County. We run ratios on every individual neighborhood to see what the sales are doing in those neighborhoods to see if we need to adjust up or down. This year you will see a little fluctuation of some properties going down, but then we also still have neighborhoods that are going up. So,
are you seeing a pattern? More down than up?
Not really. It's probably more along the line of 50-50.
Okay.
We're still in that analysis phase right now. We'll finish it before those notices go out in April, though.
We talked last year, and we talked about how it's not like finding a needle in a haystack, but finding comps is not the easiest in a slow market, as it is in a fast market.
Right.
So has it been the same?
It's slowed down a little bit. I can tell you the past couple of years, the way our market was going, we were getting flooded with information we couldn't even keep up with almost. We're still getting a decent amount now, but not like we were getting in the past years.
Are we seeing on average, unless somebody added a pool or square footage addition to their house, depending on where they're at, should they see their property taxes remain just about the same? Or, I mean, it's hard to say for everybody because there are hundreds of neighborhoods in Comal County.
It is. Depending on your area or the neighborhood or market area that you're in, you could see it go either way. It just depends on the sales information and what we find out through our analysis.
How is this compared to last year at this time?
It's a little slower. Like I said, we're not getting as much sales information. We're still getting a decent amount. It's still helpful information to make sure we're at 100% of market value.
So let's talk about market value really quick. So many people complain or talk about property taxes and how, man, they're so high. And Texas is high compared to other states. How much of that is due to rising property values versus local tax rates?
How the process works is, like I said, January 1st is the appraisal date. Texas Property Tax Code says that appraisal districts have to value all property at 100% of market value. So that's what we're going to do, or we're going to do our best to do it based off of the information we have. After that, those values go to the taxing entities. They use those values to set their rates. And then obviously after that, in October, your tax bill goes out. Don't know what the rates are going to be this coming year. Once I give that to the entities, that's their baby.
Have you seen this, Jeffrey, in your time here with CAD, that we've seen, and we'll get into how primary homeowners can save maybe hundreds, possibly hundreds more dollars in tax dollars if this bill gets pushed through the state. The governor's bill, kind of another $10 billion in property taxes across the board. But have you seen this where its values may be down, then property taxes may be down too, will kind of tweak with the rates to make sure they're covered as far as funding?
I guess you could say yes. I've seen them go down though as well. So I mean, it all depends on what their budget entails, and there's a couple steps to the process.
So let's talk about if somebody receives their appraisal notice in the mail, and like, wait, man, this is too high, or maybe they're getting ready to sell and they're like, hey, wait, this is too low. What is the process, the protest process from that point? They get their appraisal notice in the mail. What is the first thing they should do?
Sure. So if you don't like the value, on that appraisal notice, it'll show a deadline. That'll be May 15th or 30 days after you receive the notice. Within your appraisal notice will be a protest form. Fill out that protest form, get it into us, and we'll get you set up for a protest hearing so we can hear all the concerns and see if there's any adjustments or any errors we did make.
Okay, you said May 15th is a deadline.
Yep.
And very good to know. All right, let's talk about Homestead, because there are people watching right now who maybe haven't filed. Do you run across people for the first time? They've lived in their house for several years, but find out for the first time, hey, what's going on here? I didn't know about this.
Absolutely. So yeah, we would definitely recommend them filling out an application. With every application, we need a copy of the driver's license that matches the address they're applying for. And if they had lived in the property for more than 1 year, we can go back up to 2 years and put that exemption on for them.
Okay, so if you're watching right now and you didn't know about the homestead exemption, which saves you a lot of money when it comes to your property taxes, especially you live in Comal ISD,
right.
Which adds another 20%. So we talk about protesting, we talk about the deadline, May 15th. Let's say someone receives their appraisal notice on end of April or maybe the first week in May. That's a rush to get a protest in by May 15th. So What accommodations do you make?
So you'd have May 15th or 30 days. Let me back up though. Not everybody's going to get an appraisal notice. If your value stays the same, you probably won't get one. If the value goes up, you will be getting one. So even if you don't get an appraisal notice, you can still protest, and we have those forms in our office.
Okay, it's very important to note that if your value stays the same, you're not getting a letter.
Right, unless you're in one of our reappraisal areas, then we send them to everybody.
Okay, and if your value goes up, then you're getting one.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's the appraisal notice.
Correct.
So not everyone's going to get one, possibly.
Possibly,
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, how many, just out of curiosity, a numbers thing, last year, how many protests did you?
Last year we had a little over 28,000 protests.
Okay, how did that compare to the previous year?
We were down about 2,000 from the previous year. Yeah, so.
Okay. So maybe this year we see more of a decline, who knows?
Potentially.
We'll see. Okay, so let's talk about Homestead right now, because there are people watching this saying, wait a second, what is a homestead exemption? And you mean to tell me I could be saving hundreds of dollars on my property taxes every year?
Sure.
So homestead exemption is a way to save on your property taxes, right? And there are several ways you can do it. So can you kind of run through a few of these?
Sure, yeah. Obviously it has to be your primary residence. We don't mind assisting at all within the office and helping you with that form. You can go on our website, which is comal80.org, and we have a online portal and you could submit your application that way. For the homestead, it is required to submit a driver's license with the address that matches the property.
That's very important because we do tell people, we bring some of our clients in here after they close just to kind of get them started on the process. And we say, listen, this could take up to 90 days.
Right.
Okay, so in the meantime, make sure that you set up an appointment to get your new driver's license so that by the time it's finished, you have it and it matches that exemption.
And if they don't have the final driver's license, that's fine. If they have the temporary one, we'll take that as well.
Okay, great. And then, so we have several different exemptions. People, like I said, it's very tax friendly in a way with the exemptions. If you're a 100% disabled veteran, you don't pay for property taxes in Texas.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
We have a very special, very unique homestead exemption. It's a local one if you live within the boundaries of Comal Independent School District, which gives you another 20%, which is huge.
It is.
We have disability veterans, depending on if you're 10%, 20%, 30%, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, you get something.
Correct. Those are lumped into 4 categories. You have a DV1, a DV2, DV3, and DV4. And to your point, it's all based off of your rating from the VA.
Okay, and we have a senior.
Over 65?
Over 65.
Yes,
and
sir.
Disabled?
Yes, sir.
I want to say, what's the markup for that? What's the total for that? Is it 10,000?
Over 65 is going to be an additional 15,000 off. Okay. And then DV is based off of your percentage rating.
Okay. Any other exemptions?
No, that basically covers them.
We have over 65.
Right. 100% disabled.
We have 100% disabled. We have Comal ISD.
And Comal ISD, that's going to be an automatic. You don't have to do anything special on the form. We'll see the entities that are listed on your account, and the 20% is automatic when approved.
So let's talk about the homestead exemption, because the governor is trying to push through another $10 billion in property tax savings for homeowners in Texas, which if it came to people voting again, they would probably vote yes, I would imagine. But this will be the third increase, the homestead exemption increase in 4 years. Remember when it was at $40,000? Mm-hmm. And now potentially could go from $100,000 to $140,000, which is, could save you hundreds of dollars more on your property taxes. So how does that, will that be, if that gets passed this year, is that something people can expect to see on this notice of appraisal or next year's?
They necessarily won't see it on their notice of appraisal, but based off of the effective date, even if you've already gotten your appraisal, you've went through the protest cycle, it'll automatically be put on if it's approved. So nobody would need to reapply. We would adjust that exemption across the board.
So let's say it was approved in November. Would it still impact your 2024 property taxes?
It depends on the effective date of it. So there are a bunch of bills, they get passed and they say the effective date is July 1st. Mm-hmm. So at that point, yeah, it would. So
homestead exemption increase possibly, and then there's a new state law that says you have to verify your homestead exemption or your homestead every 5 years now. Correct. So can you talk about that? Because that's something that's state law right now.
Sure. That's something that the property owners do not need to do. We do that audit internally. No property owner needs to reapply for their exemption unless prompted to by the district. And we're not going to go and just remove the exemption right away. We're actually going to send a soft letter at first, let them know, hey, we need more information, contact our office, and then at that point, if not, then we'll send them a formal letter letting them know if we don't get this information in, the exemption will be removed.
Give me an example where this would play out. I mean, if somebody's exemption would be in question.
I'll give you a couple of examples. One that does come across a lot, my father passes away, leaves me his house. Nothing went through probate, it was still in the dad's name, and those exemptions were being carried on even though I was living there for a couple years. Well, really that exemption was erroneously granted or was erroneously on there because we didn't know about the death. So that would be one where that exemption would need to come off.
Okay.
Another one is if you have more than one homestead in the state of Texas. If you have one here and you have one in Amarillo, we're going to prompt you. Make sure where your primary resident is. Depending on where it is, we'd either keep it on or remove it.
That doesn't automatically come off? Like if you rent that house, that's true.
Right. If I keep this house that I have my homestead and go and buy a new house, but I rent this one out and I get a homestead somewhere else in Texas and we didn't know you moved from there, that homestead needs to be removed.
Have you seen that happen then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what do you do? What's the course of action there?
At that point, we notify them, send out letters, try to verify where they are living. And if they don't live at that residence, their primary residence is somewhere else, the exemption will come off.
Okay.
But the important thing out of all this is we're going to notify all property owners. So, and the other part is the district has elected to not wait and do it every 5 years. We're actually going to do the audit every year so that our records will stay as accurate as possible. If we can keep the records from year to year more up to date, then we don't get 5 years down the road and say, man, you haven't been living in this house for 5 years. Right. We catch it right away and we don't get in that bad predicament. So,
when someone protests, what do they need? What do they need to come in with? They just come in and say, listen, if you're going to go before maybe one of the appraisers, an informal first, right? You have an informal first with one of the appraisers. And then if you're not satisfied, you go before the board.
Sure.
Right. But you have to come with something in your hand, not just, hey, darn it, my value's too high.
Absolutely.
So how should people prepare?
Comps are the best, pictures are the best. If there's a condition problem with the house, your roof is falling in, any bids that you have from contractors doesn't necessarily mean you're getting the work done, but you've had somebody look at it and know what it's going to cost. We're not contractors, right? We're appraisers. So any of that type of information helps. And to your point, if you walk into the appraisal review board and just say my value's too high,
they're going to boot you. Okay, it's over.
Their job is to weigh evidence. So they're going to look at the district's evidence, and if you come in with no evidence, the district would have the preponderance of evidence at that point.
I think it's important for people to know that we've been through this process a few times and that you have to be ready to give the board a value. If they look at you and say, what do you think it should be? And you just give them a blank stare like a deer in headlights, that's not good.
Right.
So you have to figure out before you step in before the board what that number is in your head and on paper and how you came to that.
Right.
And you have a better shot.
Like I said, it's all based off of the evidence. So if you have that opinion of value and have evidence to prove how you got to that opinion of value, that's some good evidence.
All right.
So,
what mistakes do you see that people make when they go through the protest process?
The biggest one is not bringing evidence. So we already went over that. Outside of that, really nothing. I mean, property owners that do protests, they usually, to be honest with you, out of those 28,000 protests I said we had, the appraisal review board only heard about 1,500 of them. The rest were all done informally with the district. So a lot of people brought in some good evidence and we were able to make adjustments or explain why the value is what it is, and we just closed the protest out at what they were noticed at.
Let's talk about something that a few families may be surprised about hearing when they move here, especially from California, where there's a 2% cap on property taxes. And the house only gets reassessed in California when it gets sold.
Right.
It gets assessed every year here, and we have a 10% cap here.
Right.
It's very important for people moving from out of state to understand that.
Sure.
So can you explain the 10%
Sure.
cap rule?
We have to explain that a lot. I'll give you a good example. If the property you buy here is $100,000 and it goes up from this year to next year by $100,000, so your total value is $200,000. Mm-hmm. Well, we're still going to show you what the market value is of your property, but your assessed or taxable value is only going to be $110,000. That you're only going to be taxed on 10% more than what the value was the year before. Okay.
Is that the biggest talking point, I guess, some people protesting, especially from out of state?
It is, and they understand pretty well. It really took effect back a couple years ago when the market
was on fire.
Yeah, we had a lot of caps. So
yeah, I would imagine a lot of these same people were the ones who got into bidding wars and paid a little bit more for the home.
Potentially. Yeah. I don't know their
right. But I mean, I can understand that because you're coming from a state that has a 2% cap to a state that has a 10% cap.
Right.
All right. Do you see that changing anytime soon? Or have there been talks about that every year about, hey, can we lower this to 5% or lower, or?
As of right now, no, sir. No, not as of right now.
Okay. Like out of 10 people, how many people bring up the 10%?
Maybe about 50-50, especially if they have that cap on their property so they can understand how it works. You know, if your value stayed the same from one year to the next, you're not going to have a cap, so typically it doesn't come up.
So we've covered a lot of ground here today. Do you have anything else to say, more advice for property owners in Comal County, how to navigate this property tax process this year's?
Sure. Pay attention for an appraisal notice. If you don't get one, look on our website, comalad.org. Can always call the office. We're happy to help out. And just remember that protest deadline is May 15th, or 30 days from when you receive your notice, whichever is later.
Golden information once again. I appreciate your help.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
for all your time, and best wishes for you the rest of the process.
Awesome.
Thank
Glad
you.
to be here. Thanks for having me.
So no one-size-fits-all answer for everyone. There's hundreds of neighborhoods in Comal County, and there's different price points. So up or down, it depends on what neighborhood you're in, but we are starting to see similar trends to last year's taxes when the market basically flatlined. We do know this, Jeffrey Booker did tell us exiting that, hey, the first homes, the first neighborhoods to take the first hit will be the track neighborhoods. Track neighborhoods being the smaller homes, and those values he's showing so far from the evidence he has, those values have taken a hit. No surprise, because we talk on this channel quite a bit about new construction home builders in New Braunfels offering all these incentives and discounts, which eventually lowers the price of a home. Let me know, does this information help you out? If you have any questions about what you watched, what you heard today, please reach out to me and ask, and let's talk and let's clear up all of this so you know what to do going forward. And if you haven't applied for your homestead exemption, for crying out loud, do that ASAP. And if you're thinking about moving to New Braunfels, the New Braunfels area, or selling your home here, of course, I'd love to be your real estate resource of choice. You can email me, you can call me, or you can shoot me a text. As always, thank you so much for watching our videos, and we'll see you on the next one.